Welcome to a new daily top Askreddit video. Today's topic:
what crazy stuff happened in the year 2001 that got overshadowed by 9/11? A huge investigation revealed that the McDonald's Monopoly campaign was frauded since 1989 and had almost no legitimate winners. One guy was giving winning pieces to friends and family, and later the mafia. When this broke, it was mere weeks before 9/11, so it got quickly overshadowed. Edit, double-checking my facts, it went to trial on September 10th, wild. McMillions is well worth watching about this, even if only for that one hilarious FBI guy. It's an interesting story, but I thought it was an awful documentary. They stretched it out too long, and they give way too much time to minor characters. I got bored after 2 or 3 episodes. Congressman Gary Condit having an affair with 24-year-old intern, Chandra Levy, who went missing and was later found murdered. I remember the Eminem lyric, "How can one Chandra be so Levy?" Quote, "I will die on the hill that business" is a top 5 Eminem song. American Airlines Flight 587. An Airbus A300 crashed in Queens, NY 2 months after 9/11. It was the second deadliest aviation accident in US history, and not well remembered. A woman who survived the WTC attacks perished on that flight. Fuck. That's some Final Destination fate. As a Naya, I remember this vividly. All of the local news channels were immediately questioning whether or not it was another terrorist attack. It was terrifying. Yep, even on the opposite coast, the sentiment was very much, oh shit, is it happening again? Exclamation mark quote. Air Transat Flight 236. Plane from Toronto to Lisbon ran out of fuel in the middle of the Atlantic and glided 75 miles to an airport in the Azores and safely landed. Longest glide of a passenger airliner. Happened 3 weeks before 9/11. https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/air_transat_flight_236. My butt cheeks would be cramping so hard from clenching for 75 miles. Not mine, I'd be shitting myself good and proper. I lived where the anthrax hit in 2001, just days after 9/11. They had to close down our post office and for weeks there was no mail, then finally bills came radiated and in plastic bags. You couldn't open any of the mail, it was just stuck together. And this was back in the days before you could pay bills online. The anthrax attacks and DC sniper don't get talked about enough. They were, or at least felt like, part of 9/11 at the time and were a major contributing factor to the climate in the country that led to the approval of the next decade plus of the GWOT. Edit, and the shoe bomber. Exclamation mark. It's my turn. Lived in PG County during the DC sniper shit. The night before he was at a school, I went to a midnight showing of a movie with my roommate. When we left the mall we had to pull over because we missed a turn. We pulled into said school, Benjamin Tasker, to get our bearings. It was 3 a.m. There was one car in the lot, we didn't see anybody. We figured out where we took the wrong turn and left. Later we'd come to find out we may have seen the Caprice the morning of the shooting. Real fear of God moment. Also, I was on the metro into Pentagon City when the Pentagon was hit on 9/11. That sucked a different kind of ass. System of a Down's Toxicity was released on September 4th. Slayers, God Hates Us All, released on September 11th. George Carlin records an album on September 10th called I Kinda Like It When a Lot of People Die. In the set's 10-minute closer, Uncle Dave, Carlin explains why he likes big, fatal disasters with lots of dead people, asking, "You know what's the best thing I can hear on television?" We interrupt this program, "You know the worst thing I can hear?" No one was hurt. I'm always rooting for a really high death toll, that's why I like natural disasters. An earlier joke in the set includes reference to Osama bin Laden and an exploding airplane. Needless to say, the album was shelved until about 2016. I was working at a music store and Dream Theater released a live album on 9/11 called Live Scenes from New York, and the original album cover featured an illustration of the WTC on fire. We were asked to pull it the next day, and they re-released it with a new cover a bit later, but apparently if you went to a store and bought one it's somewhat of a collector's item, by which I mean lists on eBay for about $75 for a then $18 CD. I still own an unopened copy of this with a dated receipt. I remember Mike Portnoy posting about how gobsmacked they all were. They're from New York and the image wasn't meant to be the WTC on fire at all. It was a reference to the burning heart graphic scene on the cover of their Images and Words album, but instead drawn as an apple with the NYC skyline on top of it. The Live Scenes from New York title was because it was the live version of their album Scenes from a Memory recorded at their hometown show. Such an insane coincidence for it to end up describing that day's events with the cover art. A hang glider accidentally crashed into the Statue of Liberty. Out of all of the things listed, this is the only one THST triggered a faint memory of it happening lol. I was visiting the CNN Center in Atlanta with my now husband when that happened. I remember seeing the guy dangling from the statue's crown. Parenthetically, I met my husband for the first time in person 3 weeks before 9/11. We'd been email friends for 2 years by that point. This year we celebrate our 20th anniversary. In mid-August 2001 I took a trip with my dad to New York from California. We went to the top of the World Trade Center, inside the Statue of Liberty crown, and I put my hand on a basketball with an imprint of Shaq's hand in the NBA store. 1 week later, that paraglider got stuck on the Statue of Liberty. 2 weeks later, I coincidentally ran into Shaq and actually shook his hand. 3 weeks later, well you know. Bro, you gotta stop touching stuff. Mad cow disease, Michael Jordan coming out of retirement for the second time, Aliyah plane crash. Wow, I thought Aliyah's crash was much earlier, like 98. Also fun fact, the Band Geeks episode of SpongeBob was also released 4 days before 9/11. Nepalese royal massacre, June 1, 2001. 9 members of the royal family were killed, including the king. It is thought that the crown prince, who died 3 days later after being in a coma and being crowned the new king, was responsible. And people say the plot of Hamlet is over the top. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/nepalese_royal_massacre. The crown prince opened fire at an event killing damn everyone in line for royal succession, then he shot himself in the head. There was no attempt to become the king, though he was made king while in a coma, he just killed everyone else in line. Why does the comment before yours say, it is believed, that he was responsible? If he opened fire and killed everyone, I think it's safe to say he's responsible. The McDonald's monopoly scandal. The FBI uncovered this massive network of people involved in claiming all the prizes that were being stolen by the head of security at the company McDonald's had hired to run the game. HBO has a good documentary on it. $McMillion, great story. The movie Zoolander flopped, relatively speaking, at the box office because it came out right after 9/11. Donnie Darko also came out shortly after 9/11 and revolves around a plane engine crashing into the main character's house. Probably didn't fare too well at the box office as a result. I want to say Ebert brings up 9/11 in the review for Zoolander, and it's part of the reason he gives it a bad score, like a lot of his criticisms seem to be a forced connection to 9/11 stuff, really weird. But why male models? Are you serious? I just explained that. The Boston Globe had all the information ready to release uncovering the rampant pedophilia being covered up by the Catholic Church. After 9/11, they decided to wait to release it. For those that haven't seen it, Spotlight is absolutely a must-watch on this entire investigation, and even covers exactly this instance in the movie. Fantastic movie, incredible cast. Probably the right call TBH. The news cycle would be dominated by 9/11, so it'd be easier for the church to suppress the story. Fewer readers, stories means there's less public outrage as well. You'd hate it if you put it out and there wasn't enough public outcry to get much done about it. People a few months later, if someone brings it up, goes, oh yeah, I kind of vaguely heard about it. Anyway, where should we eat? Quote. The murder of Henryk Siwiak. He's known as the last person killed in NYC on the 9th of November 2001, right before midnight, and it wasn't related to the terror attacks. He was gunned down in Brooklyn when he mistakenly went there to start a new job. His murder remains unsolved. He got shot in Bed-Stuy in 2001 in the middle of the night. Probably many people like that back then, much better nowadays though. I know some folks who owned a brownstone mansion in Bed-Stuy, bought it for peanuts when it was a war zone in the 70s as crunchy first-wave gentrifiers, sold it for $300K in the 90s and bought a farm upstate. It would go for $3 million today in the same condition they left it. Imagine how much of a shit human being you have to be to murder someone the day of 9/11 in New York of all places. Wait till the next day like a decent murderer. Mariners won 116 games. And still didn't make the World Series. Beating the Yankees at that time would have been in poor form. Hainan Island incident in April 2001. A Chinese jet clipped a U.S. aircraft off the coast of China. The jet crashed in the sea, and the U.S. aircraft landed in China. First major geopolitical mess of George Bush's presidency. Gave the world a somewhat major incident. I got briefly concerned as a teenager. https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/Hainan_Island_incident. Not any US aircraft, a military signals intelligence plane. The Chinese completely stripped the plane and didn't even try to hide it. All the US recovered was the airframe. Have friends of friends that were on that P3. Once they stabilized the aircraft after the collision, the aircrew stripped anything they could and tossed it into the sea. There are protocols in place to destroy COMSEC and other sensitive materials, and the aircraft would be zeroized as well. Of course, they still had limited time since it was an emergency and they had to get on the ground quick. My next-door neighbor was one of the guys on the plane. He was a few years older than me. I was still in high school. After he got back, he and his parents came over and he talked about it a bit with my parents. The only story I remember him telling was that the guards didn't know he spoke Chinese and he almost blew it when one of them asked another something like, "What time is it?" Or, "How long have we been here?" And he instinctively looked at his wrist.